So why build a studio out here when you already had a studio, a thriving studio in Portland?
Well, it was a thriving studio, but it was really tiny.
Ah.
And it was essentially a living room and a dining room, and I had a tiny little window between the control room and the studio. That window actually still is behind me, that tiny little window, sort of as a souvenir. But I had a
Or
dream.
a reminder.
Yeah, the first time I played in a studio, it was it was, I think, the late '70s, and I just fell in love with the studio environment. I played violin on somebody's records, and it was up at K. Smith Studios up in Seattle. It was, and Hart had recorded there, and Elton John, and I just fell in love with it. So I started with a 2-track, and then a 4-track tape recorder, and then an 8-track tape recorder. And the first recording I made with the 8-track recorder was with an acoustic guitarist I had met from Ireland, a guy named Micheál O'Donnell. The two of us put a demo together, and it ended up being taken up by Windham Hill Records, and it ended up in a 7-year career playing with a group called Night Noise. So we toured all over the world, and at the same time we toured, the studio grew out of the band, and the band grew out of the studio, because I did all of our recordings.
Yeah.
And out of the success of that band, people started wanting me to produce their records and to record their records. And I left Night Noise in 1992. I sent my son off to college. I married my wife Jackie, and in '93 I bought this land out here in Corbett because I love the country, on 26 acres, with a dream of building a studio. It took from 1993 till 2000 to open it, about 2.5 years of building it. And I wanted to make it with no compromises in terms of acoustics, because I love the sound. When I first recorded the violin, it really didn't sound like a violin coming back to me. And I really had a passion to get a piano sound, a violin sound. And there were certain compromises I had because of the size of my studio in Portland. And so I went all out and was going to do a nice little $80,000 remodel of the barn, and $500,000 later I opened Big Red Studio.
Now, this board has a really long and storied history. What is it, and how did you get it?
Well, it's made by a company called Trident, which was a studio in England, and they made their own consoles there. And they were getting a huge reputation. Some people said, could you make some consoles? So Trident consoles started to be made, and they were handmade, and people, they were highly prized. So their flagship of their last handmade consoles was a TSM, which is what this model is. It was originally bought by Jose Feliciano. It was inherited by his wife due to a divorce. About a year later, it was born, I think, or made in 1979. And 1980, the Automat, which was a famed studio in San Francisco, purchased the board and installed it there. And it had a lot of firsts. It had a very primitive automation, and it had the first semi-parametric EQ, lots of bells and whistles for the day. And then it's recorded recordings by Santana, Jefferson Starship, a slew of artists. Then it was bought by Narada Michael Walden, a producer, and moved to Sausalito, and there he cut hits with Mariah Carey, Steve Winwood. First Aretha Franklin record was done on this console, so it has a huge history. So when we installed it here and we pulled it in, it was a muddy winter day. I drove it up in a U-Haul from San Francisco, and 5 of us and a special team of guys from a safe moving company to get it in here, and we had to take the frame off and everything. So everyone was saying, now there could be, some famous person spit in here. Let's not touch it. So, but it's been a wonderful tool for the studio, and the sound is just wonderful.
Is it meaningful to the people who come in here to record to know of the history of the board?
It's not important. I mean, the proof is what you hear when we do the recording, and that really is what it is. Because I did the recordings I'm proud of on a Mackie console,
Uh-huh.
a few $1,000 console in my studio in Portland, and I'm still very proud of. So a lot of it has to do with who's moving the dials.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When people come out here, because it's a trip from Portland, people, you know.
Not much of a trip.
Well, but it's a totally different environment.
It certainly
It
is.
really is. Do you think that kind of coming out of an urban setting to this kind of idyllic isolation has anything to do with performance?
I think so. There's less distractions. There's not a coffee shop next door. People seem to focus a bit more. I think they're inspired by the nature that's here. There was something else. I'm trying to think of it. I don't know. There's just a great vibe here. But, there's just not distractions. And people who have a name that come here feel that they have the privacy that they don't get in the city. And again, if a band comes from out of town, they might be in a hotel. Instead of going to the nightclub afterward, they listen to the telephone.
The telephone, that's okay.
Excuse me. Okay.
That was Lady Gaga wanting to record here, correct?
No, but recently we had Liv Warfield, and one of the most important things for her, and we had Prince's horn section, the new power generation, and privacy is important to people.
You're known for your acoustic recordings.
That's my background, and that's what I focus on.
But Liv Warfield is certainly not an acoustic artist.
Right, and I brought in engineer Nick Moon to engineer that particular project.
Do you approach that kind of? If say you didn't bring in Nick Moon, how would you approach that differently?
Well,
if you were recording
music. I mean, music is melody, harmony, rhythm, textures. That kind of thing. For instance, early on, about 2001, a reggae group, Rhythm Culture, wanted to do a recording out here. I had never recorded reggae. I loved the music. So I just researched what it sounds like. So there's styles within each recording in each genre. So how do you record a kick drum in a reggae? How do you record the hi-hat? So a lot of comparison and a lot of research. Also, asking other engineers and inquiring. A couple of years ago, I did a remote recording of the Portland Opera doing Philip Glass's Orfeo. I had no idea how to record an opera, but I ended up doing it just by researching and finding out what the techniques are there. But whether you're miking a acoustic guitar, or you're recording an electric guitar, you're still using microphones. You hear the sound coming out of the amp, or you hear the sound coming out of the instrument. You want to reproduce that. And if I can get that on tape, then you can manipulate it any way you want. So,
are you so busy running the studio that you don't play anymore, or do you still play?
I play some. I play a few gigs a year with Jim Page, a singer-songwriter from Seattle. I've been playing for years with him, and I miss it some.
Do you?
Yeah. So I hope within the next couple of years to retire and just play violin all the time.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, you've got some place to record it.
Right. That's for sure.
Don't you have hours and hours and hours of your own things on tape?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Played on many records.
Yeah. I mean, you could release a solo record right now, couldn't you?
Probably not a solo record. I could probably create one.
Yeah.
But I'd have to take the time and kind of defuse from all the years of recording other people.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? What would that process be in your
Well,
mind?
it'd be composing, which to me is more sweat than inspiration. So I'd really have to sit and write, and just focus on that, and not be distracted by the particular overdubs we're doing that day, or thinking about how we're going to make a transition from this song to a next while I'm producing other people's music. 'Cause
Are
I
you
get very involved.
are you trying to tell me that composing is like what writers say when writers say the pleasure is in having written?
Well, yes and no. When I actually get into the mode of writing, it's a wonderful process. But there has to be a certain mental kind of space around me.
Yeah.
So much of my life right now is creating music, and involved in the production of taking someone else's ideas and help them come to fruition. And that is a wonderful process. I love that kind of thing. And so to diffuse from doing that to the flip side of creating on my own would be just take a change, almost a life change.
Well, congratulations on your longevity, because in the music business that means a lot.
All right.
And
Thanks.
thanks for being with us.
Okay, thank you, Tom.